Hey, I'm Jamie from Guitarist magazine. For decades now, Gibson's 335 has been the benchmark for thin-line semi-acoustic guitar tone. But obviously in the decades that have passed since the 335 was invented, there's been quite a few alternative takes on that concept. And we've got 4 very new ones, very good ones here to show you today. And we're going to compare them against the benchmark itself. So without further ado, let's take a look at the guitars.
335s are so enjoyable to play because it's such a mix of beasts. You've got the semi-hollow nature of the guitar, you've also got the solid section through the middle, and it's physically very big guitar, which is quite a different experience from something like a Strat or a Tele or a Les Paul, which is a more intimate guitar to play. But really it's the versatility, you know, on the neck pickup with the tone control rolled back a bit, it's a great jazzy sound. On the bridge pickup with everything flat out, that's as rock as you can get. Think about Clapton's Crossroads at the Albert Hall. Although, interestingly, Clapton used the in-between setting quite a lot. He liked the bridge pickup absolutely maxed out. The toggle in the center section, but with the neck pickup rolled off a little bit. So, but you go from that really piercing, trebly, martial overdrive right through to really beautiful cleans all in one guitar.
I'm not sure you can really improve on a design like the 335. I think what you could do is take elements of what makes it so good and emphasize those. So, you know, it could be a jazzy guitar. So I think one thing that designers can do is say, okay, let's take the convenient things about it, like the thin line body, so it's not full depth, and the fact that it's not going to, you know, start feeding back so easily. But let's push the 335 concept in a more jazzy direction. And I think maybe one of the guitars like the Fret King Elise that we've got here today is probably an example of that way of thinking. Another way of doing it would be to say, okay, it's a great rock guitar as well. It's got a really savage tone when you want it to be. And I think if you looked at the PRS that we're going to take a look at, the Zach Myers model, that's probably an example of the 335 concept being taken in a more refined, sort of high-gain rock direction. So I think it's more a case of taking what's a brilliant all-rounder and picking some of the sort of segments of that fruit, if you like, and sort of enlarging upon them. This is the Fret King JE Elise, and the JE stands for John Etheridge, who's a sort of very accomplished jazz fusion guitarist. And it's a little bit different to the standard model Elise. I mean, you've got the 3-a-side headstock here, for example, and you've got a kind of ebony tailpiece here, which is slightly sort of misleading because it's actually sort of strings through body design, and the tailpiece is glued directly onto the top. One way in which this is different from a Gibson 335 is that it's not got a laminate top, it's actually got a solid carved top, which is quite a high-end feature for a guitar at this price point. And it's got this thing called a vari-coil, which is kind of a way of continuously adjusting between single coil sounds and full-on humbucker sounds. So here we are on the neck pickup. And here it's got a very sort of plummy, rounded tone, be perfect for jazz really. Just make it a very sort of convenient jazz guitar to take to a gig with the small body size, which is actually quite a bit smaller. It's a sort of offset design, so it sits comfortably in your lap. If we go to the bridge, doesn't lack sort of bite and punch, so you know it's a little bit more versatile than some single pickup jazz guitars that you find. So I would hesitate to call this a one-trick pony or even just solely a jazz guitar. I think it could do most of the things that the 335 can very well. And you've also got a sort of vari-coil here, which this is the sort of sound of it on sort of full humbucker mode. And if I turn that dial all the way down to the sort of other end of the spectrum, you've got a much more single coil-like sound, and it's quite a bit thinner, and you might find that useful for fitting in the mix in a particular ensemble situation or in a recording. Okay, let me just show you that again. So this is the vari-coil system. It's on the sort of humbucker end of the spectrum now, so you can hear it's quite sort of warm and full. If I turn it all the way around to the other end, much more of a sort of hollow tone. And if you think about it, you can have any point in between. That's a great way to dial in the perfect sound for you.
Okay, so this LTD guitar is physically quite a bit smaller than a 335. It retains the solid centre block, only has one F-hole, but it's more compact in design, so it feels a little more like a traditional solid body to hold. It's bound front and back. There are no contours, so it's not like a Strat that doesn't really sit into you. And of course, it's got this fantastic Bigsby. Well, it's interesting because of the slight Gretschy type influences. It all of a sudden brings to mind kind of rock and roll, but also how that developed through guys like Billy Duffy into the sort of more rock world. But it's got a Bigsby, so you want to just... What's interesting about the ESP is although you can do all that twangy kind of B-movie kind of stuff if you want to do it, the neck pickup actually sounds pretty jazzy too, as you hear in the main track that we recorded. But, you know, it's a pretty full-throated... So it's got a really nice plummy sound to it too. So even though it's kind of a much more compact design of a guitar, the semi-hollow design still seems to let it rock and do the more mellow stuff equally well.
So this is the Comins GCS1. It's the most expensive of the guitars we're looking at today. It's about 500 quid more than the other ones selection that we're looking at, and in some ways this is kind of harks towards the 335's sort of LA session side of its personality. You know, you think about players like Larry Carlton, bands like Steely Dan and so forth. You've got this kind of sound which is poised perfectly between the world of rock and jazz. I think this is the sort of world that this guitar has been designed for. I mean, it's got some features that the other guitars don't have. I mean, it's worth knowing that the sort of hollow bits of this guitar end about the top of the F-holes here. So this bit here is all kind of solid wood, but you've still got large sort of amounts of air inside it, so you do still have that sort of airy tone. If you listen to it, it's kind of like, I think, the most sort of piano-like of the guitars in tone, if you will. So if I go like... You can immediately see that whole world of fusion and kind of urbane jazzy rock kind of. This is where this guitar lives, basically. It's got a coil tap function, so you can have that on either pickup. I mean, it's quite a lot thinner, but you might find that useful. Actually, you could probably squeeze some sort of acoustic-like tones out of this guitar quite easily, and that's, you know, not a bad thing to have in your back pocket if you're playing a varied set. The other things that strike me about this guitar is it feels light, it feels very slimline. I know they're all kind of thin line guitars, but this one feels very compact, very comfortable to hold. It's quite a handsome looking guitar as well, and you know, I think if you're that sort of smooth jazz rock guy, this could be a good choice for you.
The last of our four guitars is the PRS SE Zach Myers model. It's the least semi-acoustic of all of the guitars we've looked at today. This bit here is hollow, the rest of it's a solid body guitar. Nonetheless, it's pretty light. It's just got a solid mahogany back, it's got a maple top and this maple veneer cap. It looks like a great deal more expensive than it is. It's actually the cheapest guitar of the four we've got here today. The other thing I'll just mention is it has a lovely satin finish to the back of the neck. It feels like way more money than the price suggests. While we might most readily associate semi-acoustics with blues and jazz and styles on that side of the fence, actually they've been used pretty widely in rock as well. If you think about Malcolm Young in AC/DC, his Gretsch is pretty much hollow. Billy Duffy in the Cult, they get used everywhere. Reverend Horton Heat with his Gretsch. they get used in rock with fairly heavy gain sounds, and it just adds a width, an extra dimension to the sound that maybe you don't get with a fully solid guitar. And I guess Zach's in a band called Shinedown, very heavy band, uses a lot of gain. That's where this guitar would be used. So we'll just run around a few sounds from the guitar. Here's a sort of cleanish type tone starting on the bridge pickup. Now we'll flick to the neck pickup. And as mentioned, we'll just add some gain in now with a Red Jasper overdrive from Free the Tone. Despite being the least expensive guitar we've looked at, the Zach almost feels like the most expensive guitar for some reason. It's got a real high quality feel. It's pretty versatile. It's the most solid of all the guitars. So maybe for your jazz and your fusion and your traditional blues, the other guitars might be more relevant. But if you have a rock mind and you fancy just a little extra width in your tone, this is a fantastic choice. If I had to pick a guitar to choose from today's four, bearing in mind that we're talking about an evolution of the 335's design, let it be said that I would have a 335 every single day of the week. It's a fantastic guitar, I love them and I play them. However, of these guitars, which obviously cost a lot less money, I'd pick the Fret King, the John Etheridge model. It's a really smart evolution of design. It's fantastically versatile and it feels like a really super grown-up guitar. I like the dimensions, like the way it looks, like the execution. Good job, Fret King. Although it's the furthest away from the 335 ethos and design, I really warm to the ESP LTD guitar as well. I think the Bigsby and the kind of Gretschy vibe makes me want to do all those B-movie kind of tremolo wobble type things, and it's really effective for that if you're in a slightly more rocky mood.
So I've got two guitars balanced on my lap here rather awkwardly because I'm having trouble actually choosing a winner out of these two. You've got the Comins and the Fret King, which both live in a very similar sort of space, if you like, tonally. They're on the jazzier side of things, and as regards the 335 heritage, I think we're kind of taking two important things from that. One is the compactness and of the thin line body, and these are actually even more compact than a 335, and they're very light, very easy to handle, and also the sort of plummy tones, the sort of jazz fusion tones that are great. I think before we sort of pick a winner out of these two, I'd also like to say that the PRS was really exceptional. I mean, it's got this amazingly sort of well balanced, almost hi-fi kind of tone. If I was really into that sort of thing, I think it would be an amazing guitar to own. But for the kind of territory that we were talking about just then, Larry Carlton and so on and so forth, I think these guitars are both very worthy candidates. The Comins probably just edges it for me. It's just got a certain kind of refinement to it, which is really nice. This is not to say this isn't refined. This is great. It's a really well thought through guitar, and this is more expensive by a fair margin, like 500 quid or something. But if we're coming down to splitting hairs, then I'd probably take the Comins home.